to take a look at the idea of a blind SQL injection. A blind SQL injection is probably one of the more common of the SQL injections that you'll typically see in applications. The difference between this and what we've seen so far is that in the previous examples of SQL injection, when we managed to get a SQL injection, there was indication in the actual web page itself. So for instance, we could cause a where clause to return more records to us than we should have gotten, and those records would display directly inside of the browser, right? It would show as the results of essentially the query. Similarly, if we entered in, say, a single quote, we would get a database error indicating to us that there is a potential issue that could cause SQL injection. With blind SQL injection, these sorts of things are missing. We don't necessarily have the data available to us in the browser itself. We have to be a bit more creative with how we retrieve it. Similarly, we may see situations where there's no error messages displayed, so we may not be able to actually see any indication of the SQL injection. We just have to try to see things on the page that indicate to us that we are actually changing things or causing some sort of issue. So to demonstrate this, we're going to take a look at this lab here, which is about conditional responses. So when we come over into this lab, basically the main thing that this is manipulating is actually a cookie in the browser. And it's by changing a value in that cookie, we're going to be able to change the actual behavior of the application. So when we take a look at this application, basically, we can see here that it seems like a pretty standard application, right? So on this front page here, we see that everything seems fairly standard. And in order to see something in a bit more detail, we actually could probably go over into Burp Suite and try intercepting requests that are being sent between us and this actual web page itself. So the main way that I'm going to do this, I'm going to turn my interceptor on. I'm going to go ahead and refresh this page. We're going to take a look at the requests that are actually captured. And the main one that I'm really interested in is this request right here, which is going to the lab URL, right? And when we take a look at this, we see a few different cookies that are inside of this request. And one of them is a tracking ID, and the other is a session. Now, my thoughts are that, when I see cookies with data that I can control, I really like to try to go after those values. The main reason that I'm interested in these values is that when developers are taking a look at controlling SQL injection, cross-site scripting, these types of vulnerabilities, they're very often taking a look at inputs that they know the user controls. If you can find something that's a bit less clear that we control, developers may have forgotten about it. They may not have considered it a potential vector. This is why I like to take a look at these types of values. So like a cookie value is a really good example of that. If a developer gets a cookie value in, they may not be thinking that, we could manipulate that value. So they may just use it in an insecure way. And that's exactly what ends up happening in this example here. So if I put, say, a closing single quote and, we'll just put that in just to see exactly what the results are. And to see it, we just have to take a look at this web page here. When I go ahead and I forward these requests, I'll bring this back over here. We'll say forward these two requests, right? And then I'm going to turn my intercept off. What we'll see is that really the page is looking pretty similar to the way it was before, right? Let's go ahead and refresh this and go back to the normal page. And we'll notice actually a really subtle difference. Do you see this welcome back that's showing at the top here? Pay attention to that value in particular, right? So I'll turn my interceptor back on. And I'm going to go ahead and refresh this page. And again, I'm going to go back into Burp Suite. I'm going to take this cookie, I'm going to add a single quote to the end of it. I'm going to run through and forward that request. And what you'll see here is that that welcome back actually disappeared. So you see it's not there, right? When I refresh it normally, it is there. So you see that when we manipulate that cookie, this value changes. So that's really interesting to us. Basically, what's happening there is that like with that cookies being used in some sort of way to be able to, render parts of the page. And basically the part that is rendering that welcome back is probably associated with that particular value that we're manipulating, which in turn then is causing it to fail to actually render. So that's showing us that we have an error, right? So you see how that's a lot more discrete. It's not like something that jumps out at us that says like, ooh, there's a SQL database error. It's something that's very subtle. But if we pay good attention, we can see those kind of results happening. Now, how can we actually use this? Because you'll see that basically this is sort of blind in two ways, right? The first way is that we don't see any database errors. That's a bit tricky to work with. The second way that this is blind is that we don't actually see any sort of results from our query, right? So how can we actually use that? Well, we have to sort of play around with the idea that when there's a database error, we get no welcome back message, right? But when there's not a database error, when things work, we get the welcome back message. Using that idea, we can actually see if a result in a query is true or false. And using that idea, we can understand information about the actual tables themselves. So let me show you what I mean by that. So if I were to go ahead and intercept my requests again, right, and I refresh here, Basically, if I take a look at this value here and I change this to something that's true, right? So if I put a closing quote, I say like and 1 equals 1, and maybe I put like a comment at the end, right? When I forward that request, do you see that the welcome back changes? It's because I didn't cause any sort of error, right? Because I didn't cause an error, the welcome back still remains. Comparing that to the first example that I showed you, where I put in the single closing quote, right? That would cause an error, which in turn causes welcome back to disappear. So you see that we have a clear indicator on if the database returned an error or not, right? So one way that we can use this is we can actually check to see if a table exists inside of the database. The way that we can do that is if we refresh this, what we can do is we can craft a query that looks something like this. I put my closing quote, right? And then what I do is I put in an and clause here, and I say select A from users, limit 1 is equal to A, like this. And what that's basically going to do is it's going to do a select query on the table users. If the table users exists, this will succeed. If the table users does not exist, this will fail. So this would tell us if the users table exists in the database. So basically, when we take a look at this result, when this select happens, it will give us back the value A if the users table exists, and that would be equal to this A value here, which in turn would mean that our query has that users table available to it. Now, something that I just want to clarify here, so you see that I have a single quote here, no closing single quote here. The reason for that is, remember, there's always a closing quote at the end of this string, essentially, right? So we're just taking advantage of the fact that that closing quote's already there, and we're just using that. I could put a closing quote and a comment, and that would work about the same, but this is one way that we can structure that sort of pair load, right? Now, see here, welcome back. So what that tells us is that there is a users table. Now, from here, it becomes fairly straightforward. Well, we can ask more questions. We can say, ooh, maybe the username we could figure out, right? So how would we do something like that? Well, if I refresh this, right, and I grab this cookie, I can put my closing quote in, right? And then I could say, and we could say select A from users, where username equals, say, administrator, right? We could say that is equal to A. What this will do is basically, if this part of the query succeeds, it will give us back A as a result. So in this case, the field A, right? If this query is not correct, right, if this where clause is not true, then it wouldn't give us any result, and it would end up being false. So basically, if we see welcome back, that tells us that there's a user there with the username administrator. And we see that it does give us welcome back, so it tells us that there's an administrative user. Now we can use a similar sort of process to actually decode the password as well. Basically, the way that this would generally work is we would say, take a look at the actual, segments of the password itself, and we could use that to basically like slowly chip away at what's available inside of the actual password itself, right? So, for example, if I were to refresh this, one way that I could structure this query is I could say put a closing quote in, and then I could say something like this. I could say select substring password 11, right, from users, where username equals administrator equals A. So sort of similar sort of structure. Basically what we're saying is if the substring of the password, so the first character in the password, is equal to A. And you could see logically how we could continue to repeat this. We could say, is it equal to B? Is it equal to C? Is it equal to D? We could just keep going and going and going, and eventually we'd be able to find the actual password just based on the actual results of this, right? So we'll see here that it doesn't show welcome back. That means the first character and the password for the administrator is not A, right? So, that gives us some general information about that. Now, one of the questions you may be wondering is basically, well, okay, that is going to take a really long time, obviously, to check one by one every single letter, every single character. We have techniques that can help us with actually resolving that, right? Some different ways that we can actually brute force that password fairly effectively using this SQL injection. So for now, I'm going to leave this video here. That gives you the general intuition around how this sort of blind SQL injection is working, the ways that we're understanding, how we can actually gather data without actually being able to see it. And in the next video, I'm going to show you how we can actually go through that process of brute forcing the password and some of the different ways that that process is generally going to work for us. So we'll end off here for now. In the next video, we'll finish up the brute forcing of this password. So thanks so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.